Welcome to the deep dive. Today we are tackling, well, one of the biggest questions there is, really. Do we actually have free will?
It's fundamental, isn't it?
Yeah,
Affects everything.
absolutely. How we see ourselves, interact, build societies. The philosopher John Searle put it quite dramatically.
Oh, yeah. What did he say?
He said, if free will turns out to be an illusion, it'd be a bigger revolution than Einstein, Copernicus, Newton, Galileo, or Darwin.
Wow. That's a huge claim. Bigger than understanding gravity or evolution.
Exactly.
Yeah.
He said it would alter our entire conception of our relation with the universe. Think about that for a second.
It really puts it into perspective. It's not just some abstract thought experiment.
Not at all. And as we're going to explore in this deep dive, the real-world implications are massive. Understanding responsibility, justice, praise, blame, even consciousness itself.
Touches literally everything.
Great. And our mission today is to look at this age-old debate through a very modern lens, artificial intelligence. Specifically, we've got insights from ChatGPT-5, Gemini 2.5 Pro, and Grok 4.
So we're seeing how these advanced models grapple with the same questions humans have for centuries.
Precisely. We'll unpack what they say, how they define free will, where they clash, especially in light of those scientific giants Searle mentioned, and why getting this right or wrong matters so much.
Okay, sounds fascinating. Where do we start?
Okay, let's unpack this.
Right. Well, the first hurdle always is definition. What are we actually talking about when we say free will? People use the term so differently.
Yeah, it gets tangled fast.
Yeah.
So how did the AIs help clarify? Let's start with ChatGPT-5. It seems to have a pretty strong view.
It does. ChatGPT-5 offers a very specific, very philosophically pointed definition. It says, free will is the supposed ability to originate thoughts or actions independently of prior causes, making the individual the true first cause of what they do.
Independently of prior causes. That sounds like the key phrase.
Absolutely pivotal. It's not just about having options, it's about being the uncaused starting point. Like, your choice isn't just the inevitable result of everything that came before your genes, your upbringing, the laws of physics acting on your brain.
But something genuinely new, a spark from you alone.
Exactly. A break in the chain of cause and effect. Philosophers often call this libertarian free will. It means you genuinely could have done otherwise, completely independent of all those prior influences.
Okay, that's a really high bar. So when we talk about Newton, Darwin, Freud, Einstein, were they challenging that specific idea that we can be the true first cause?
According to ChatGPT-5, yes. That's precisely the kind of free will they rejected. It says they all push back against the idea that humans are uncaused originators of thought and action, independent of physical law, heredity, subconscious forces, or deterministic cause and effect.
So each one, from their own angle, chipped away at this idea of us being outside the causal chain.
That's the argument. Take Newton, his laws of motion, gravity. They described a universe basically like a giant clockwork mechanism.
Predictable.
Yeah.
If you know the starting conditions and the rules.
You know the outcome. In theory, every future event is baked in. There's just no room in that picture for some spontaneous, uncaused human action popping up out of nowhere.
So our choices are just part of the clockwork, the result of physical processes in our brains.
From that purely Newtonian view, yes. Your decision to grab a coffee isn't some pure act of will, but the result of a cascade of physical and chemical events, all determined by prior events stretching way, way back.
Okay, so Newton gives us this deterministic physical world. Then Darwin comes along. How does he fit in? He's looking at life, biology.
Right, and Darwin puts humans firmly within nature, shaped by evolution. Our behaviors, our instincts, even our thoughts, they aren't just random. They're products of millions of years of natural selection favoring survival and reproduction.
So our actions are rooted in our biology, our evolved programming?
Deeply rooted. Think about basic drives protecting family, seeking connection, fear responses. Darwin's work suggests these aren't uncaused choices, but complex, evolved mechanisms. Our actions are, in large part, a product of our biological history, not sprung from nothing.
Makes sense. Okay, physics, biology. Then Freud enters the picture, looking at the mind itself.
And Freud introduces psychic determinism. He argued that what feels like our conscious choice is often driven by forces we're not even aware of, unconscious desires, repressed stuff, conflicts from our past, especially childhood.
So slips of the tongue, dreams, weird habits, they aren't random.
Not according to Freud. They're symptoms of deeper hidden causes within our psyche. This really challenges the idea that we're these perfectly rational, self-aware beings making independent choices. It suggests we're often driven by internal currents we don't consciously control or originate.
Okay, so we're influenced by physics, biology, and our unconscious minds. Then there's Einstein. How did his work, like relativity, play into this?
Well, Einstein wasn't focused on human behavior directly, but his physics reinforced a deterministic worldview. His concept of space-time treats the universe as this unified block where events unfold along predetermined paths.
His famous line, God does not play dice.
Exactly. He disliked the idea of pure randomness or uncaused events at a fundamental level.
hmm
If the whole cosmos is this interwoven fabric of cause and effect, it's hard to argue that human minds somehow get a special pass to operate outside of it. Our thoughts, our decisions would just be part of that unfolding cosmic story.
We're actors following a script, not writing it.
That's one way to interpret it from that deterministic viewpoint, yeah.
So ChatGPT-5 pulls all this together, Newton, Darwin, Freud, Einstein, and says they all converge on rejecting this idea of humans as uncaused originators. The massive follow-up question then is, were they right?
Right. Does all this science actually mean that free will, defined as being the true first cause, is impossible?
What does ChatGPT-5 conclude?
Its answer is incredibly clear. It says, yes, they were correct, at least from a scientific standpoint. Every one of them showed that what we think of as free behavior arises from prior causes.
No ambiguity there.
None. It doubles down. Yes, if free will is correctly defined as the uncaused origination of thought or action, then it's impossible, because every cause has a cause, and no human stands outside the chain.
Every cause has a cause. We're part of the chain, not standing outside it.
That's the core idea. In a universe governed by cause and effect, where everything can be traced back to prior conditions, physical, biological, psychological, there's just no logical gap for an action to start from nothing, initiated solely by you.
So our feeling of agency, of making
It
choices,
is seen as being a very complex, sophisticated part of that causal chain. We process inputs, integrate them, and produce outputs, our actions. But those actions are still effects, determined by the vast web of causes converging within us.
it's a really challenging thought because it feels so strongly like we do make independent choices. If that uncaused origination type of free will is impossible, why does it feel so real? Are we just misunderstanding ourselves? Is it about how we define free will?
That's exactly what ChatGPT-5 argues. It says, yes, people only appear to have free will if the term is watered down or redefined to mean something like acting without external coercion, which avoids the real question of causation and origin.
So it's drawing a line between, say, freedom to act versus freedom of the will itself.
Precisely. Acting without external coercion. That's our everyday experience. No one's holding a gun to your head. You feel free to choose coffee over tea.
Yeah.
That feels like freedom.
And we generally feel responsible for those choices.
Right. But ChatGPT-5 says that common understanding completely sidesteps the deeper question. Even without a gun to your head, was your choice to pick coffee uncaused?
Or was it determined by desires, habits, brain chemistry, the situation?
All converging to make that action happen right then. ChatGPT-5's stance is, if you just define free will as not being forced by someone else, you're ignoring the fundamental issue of whether the choice originated independently of all prior causes, internal and external.
So for ChatGPT-5, the only real free will is being that first cause, that uncaused originator. Anything else is just changing the definition.
That's its very clear, very strict position. It's drawn a hard line based on that specific definition of uncaused origination.
All right. A very consistent, scientifically deterministic view from ChatGPT-5. But as you said, it's not the only AI we looked at. And this is where, as you put it, it gets really interesting.
Right, because Grok 4 and Gemini 2.5 Pro don't quite land in the same place. Their responses show different interpretations, maybe different priorities in how they weigh the evidence or the definitions.
It reflects the ongoing human debate, too, doesn't it?
It really does. Let's look at Grok 4. Its definition sounds quite similar at first glance. It says, free will is the capacity of individuals to make choices and perform actions independently of prior events, natural causes, or divine intervention, enabling genuine alternative possibilities and moral responsibility.
Independently of prior events, genuine alternative possibilities. Sounds very much like that libertarian free will again.
It does. And Grok 4 also acknowledges, just like ChatGPT-5, that, yeah, Newton, Darwin, Freud, Einstein all challenged this idea. So far, they seem aligned.
But then the crucial question, were those thinkers correct? And here Grok 4 diverges sharply.
Sharply. When asked if they were correct in refuting free will, Grok 4 says, no, they were not entirely correct in refuting free will, which is the exact opposite of ChatGPT-5's firm yes.
Okay, so why? What's Grok 4's reasoning for keeping the door open?
It brings up two main things often discussed in modern free will debates. It says, modern philosophy and science, including quantum indeterminism, challenging Newtonian and Einsteinian determinism, and compatibilist arguments reconciling determinism with a meaningful form of free will, suggest the debate remains unresolved.
Okay, let's unpack those. Quantum indeterminism. That's the idea from quantum physics that things at the subatomic level are genuinely random, unpredictable.
Right. Not strictly determined like in Newton's clockwork universe. Grok 4 seems to hint that this fundamental randomness might undermine total determinism, maybe creating some wiggle room for genuine alternatives.
A loophole for free will based on quantum randomness.
Potentially, that's the implication Grok 4 is raising. And the second point is compatibilism. Can you explain that simply?
Right, compatibilism is basically trying to find a way for free will and determinism to coexist. Compatibilists say, okay, maybe our actions are determined by prior causes, but they argue we can still call an action free if it comes from our own desires, reasons, and values without external coercion.
So even if my desire for coffee was determined, if I acted on my desire without someone forcing me, that counts as free will for a compatibilist.
Essentially, yes. They redefined free will away from uncaused origination to something more like acting voluntarily or according to one's character. Grok 4 suggests that these kinds of arguments, plus quantum questions, mean the debate isn't settled. Free will might exist in these, perhaps, redefined terms.
It's looking for a middle ground, trying to reconcile our feeling of freedom with the scientific picture.
A much more nuanced, maybe kind of answer than ChatGPT-5. But ChatGPT-5 wasn't impressed by this reasoning, was it?
Not at all. It delivers a pretty direct rebuttal to Grok 4. It says, the statement is mistaken because redefining free will to fit determinism or randomness dodges the core issue. True free will requires being the uncaused origin of action, which neither quantum indeterminism nor compatibilism provides.
So, back to the core definition. ChatGPT-5 says quantum randomness isn't will, it's just noise. And compatibilism is just changing the definition.
Exactly. For ChatGPT-5, randomness doesn't give you control or origination. It's just chance. And redefining free will to mean acting on determined desires simply avoids the fundamental challenge. Are you the uncaused first cause? If not, then according to ChatGPT-5's strict definition, you don't have true free will. It sees Grok's points as philosophical workarounds, not solutions to the core problem.
It's quite a clash. The source material itself seemed quite critical of Grok's response, almost suggesting it misunderstood the scientific consensus.
Yes, the source definitely frames ChatGPT-5 as having the stronger, more scientifically aligned argument in this exchange. Let's bring in the third AI, Gemini 2.5 Pro. It takes yet another approach.
How does Gemini define free will?
Gemini offers a definition that probably sounds most like the everyday intuitive understanding. It says, free will is the capacity of an agent to choose their course of action from among various alternatives.
Simple. You have options, you pick one. That feels right, doesn't it?
It feels very familiar. It captures that subjective sense of facing choices, coffee or tea, this job or that job, and making a selection. It doesn't get bogged down immediately in the deep causation question.
Which is probably why it resonates. But ChatGPT-5, sticking to its guns, takes issue with this definition too.
Immediately. ChatGPT-5 responds, no, that definition is incorrect because it ignores the key issue of causation. Merely having alternatives doesn't mean the agent is the uncaused origin of the choice.
There it is again, causation, uncaused origin. For ChatGPT-5, the feeling of choosing from alternatives isn't enough.
Right. It's like saying a computer program chooses an option from a menu. It follows a process, selects an output based on inputs and programming, but it didn't originate the choice in an uncaused way. The appearance of selection doesn't equal uncaused will.
Okay. But even with its simpler definition, did Gemini agree that the big scientific figures challenge the idea of free choice?
Yes. On that point, it aligns, Gemini says. Yes, that definition is largely what Newton's deterministic mechanics, Darwin's evolutionary theory, Freud's psychoanalysis, and Einstein's belief in a causally bound universe all fundamentally refuted by suggesting that human actions are determined by prior causes rather than by an independent agent's choice. So, it also sees the historical weight of scientific arguments for determinism.
But then on the final question, were they correct? Gemini takes a different path again.
It does. It opts for a more cautious, almost agnostic position, Gemini concludes. Whether they were correct remains a subject of intense debate as the philosophical and scientific understanding of consciousness and determinism continues to evolve.
So Gemini is saying the jury's still out. that science and philosophy are still actively debating this fundamental point.
That's the implication.
Yeah.
It suggests it's an open question with ongoing evolution and understanding. It paints a picture of genuine uncertainty within the expert communities.
And I'm guessing ChatGPT-5 had a final word on that assessment.
Oh, absolutely. A very definitive final word. ChatGPT-5 states, "No, that assessment is inaccurate because it implies legitimate doubt about well-established scientific principles, when in fact the deterministic or probabilistic causation of all behavior is overwhelmingly supported and not genuinely in philosophical or scientific flux."
Wow. So ChatGPT-5 isn't just disagreeing, it's saying Gemini is misrepresenting the state of science, that the core idea of caused behavior isn't really up for debate anymore.
Precisely. It claims the scientific support for behavior being caused, either deterministically or probabilistically, is overwhelming, and that suggesting it's an intense debate or flux is inaccurate. It sees the scientific case as essentially closed on that front, even if humans still grapple with the philosophical fallout.
That is a stark contrast. We've got ChatGPT-5 laying down a hard line based on scientific determinism and a strict definition, Grok 4 trying to find room through quantum physics and redefinition, and Gemini reflecting a more common sense view, but concluding the debate is still wide open, only to be shot down by ChatGPT-5 saying the scientific debate is largely settled.
It really showcases how even these sophisticated AIs diverge on interpreting such a profound human question, mirroring the diversity of human thought itself.
Absolutely fascinating. But okay, let's pivot from the what and the who said what to the so what. Regardless of which AI perspective feels more compelling, why does this actually matter? What are the real-world stakes here?
This is where ChatGPT-5, particularly, gets very compelling, arguing that the implications are enormous. It says, getting the free will question right is crucial because it reshapes how we understand responsibility, morality, justice, and even consciousness itself.
Reshapes everything, basically.
Pretty much. If we aren't the true uncaused authors of our actions, then things we take for granted like blame, praise, punishment, reward suddenly look very different. ChatGPT-5 states they must be re-examined from the ground up.
Take our justice system. It seems built on the idea that people choose to do wrong and therefore deserve punishment.
Exactly. Retribution, just desserts. These ideas hinge on the belief that the person could have and should have chosen differently. But if that choice was the inevitable outcome of a chain of causes, brain chemistry, trauma, environment, genetics, does deserving punishment in the same way still make sense?
So it might shift the focus from pure punishment towards what? Understanding the causes.
Towards understanding causes, rehabilitation, prevention. If someone commits a crime due to, say, a brain tumor influencing their behavior or severe childhood abuse, knowing the cause changes how we might respond. Maybe the focus becomes treatment for the tumor, therapy for the trauma, addressing the societal conditions that contribute to crime, rather than just locking someone away because they made a bad choice.
And it works the other way, too, with praise and reward.
Potentially, yes. While we can still admire achievement, maybe the narrative shifts. Instead of only celebrating the rugged individual who pulled themselves up by their bootstraps, we might develop a deeper appreciation for the complex mix of factors. Talent, yes, but also opportunity, good parenting, supportive teachers, societal structures, even luck that contribute to success. It could foster more humility, perhaps.
Okay, so if we don't get it right, if we cling to what ChatGPT-5 calls a false notion of free will, what are the actual harms?
ChatGPT-5 argues that societies believing in this false notion may perpetuate cruelty, inequality, and delusion, the core reason. They fail to address the real causes of behavior: biological, psychological, and environmental.
So we blame the individual and ignore the context.
Exactly. Think about addiction. If you see it purely as a series of bad choices stemming from free will, you might favor punishment, criminalization, and moral judgment. Why don't they just stop?
Right, instead of seeing it as a complex brain disease influenced by genetics, environment, trauma.
And therefore, investing in treatment, harm reduction, mental health support, addressing poverty or lack of opportunity, which often correlate with addiction. By blaming the individual's will, we avoid tackling the deeper systemic causes and often end up with policies that are ineffective and even cruel.
And this applies beyond addiction to things like poverty or mental health.
Absolutely. If someone struggles with chronic depression, viewing it as a failure of will leads to stigma. Just cheer up, rather than ensuring access to therapy and medication. If someone is in poverty, believing it's solely down to their choices allows us to ignore systemic barriers like Poor education, discrimination, lack of affordable housing.
It fuels judgment and makes us complacent about fixing bigger problems.
That's the argument. Why change the system if everyone is individually responsible for their own fate? It can lead to less empathy, less collective action, and the perpetuation of inequalities because we're focused on blaming individuals rather than examining the conditions that shape their lives and choices.
That's a pretty damning critique of the potential downsides. What about the flip side? If we do accept that our actions are cause, that we're not uncaused originators, what positive changes could follow?
ChatGPT-5 suggests that recognizing this causality opens the door to greater compassion, smarter policy, and a deeper grasp of human nature. It's a shift away from asking who's to blame towards asking what caused this and how can we address those causes.
More scientific and compassionate, less moralistic.
Exactly. Imagine a justice system focused less on retribution and more on understanding the factors leading to crime. This could mean more investment in rehabilitation, mental health services within prisons, restorative justice programs where appropriate, and crucially preventative measures, early childhood education, tackling poverty, reducing exposure to violence and toxins like lead.
So responsibility doesn't disappear, but it shifts. It becomes about addressing causes and preventing future harm.
Precisely. It's still crucial to hold people accountable for their actions and protect society, but how we do that could change radically. The focus becomes modifying the conditions internal and external that lead to harmful behavior, rather than just reacting with punishment based on a potentially flawed notion of free choice.
And this applies beyond the justice system, too, to designing society.
Yes, if we understand how environments shape behavior, we can design them more intelligently. Better urban planning with green spaces to reduce stress, schools designed for diverse learning needs, workplaces that promote well-being through understanding psychological principles, public health campaigns based on behavioral science, rather than just telling people what to do.
It's about working with our nature as caused beings, rather than pretending we operate outside of causality.
That's a great way to put it. ChatGPT-5 concludes, we can build a world grounded in compassion, rehabilitation, prevention, and intelligent design of environments, treating harmful behavior not as evil to punish, but as problems to understand and solve at the root.
Seeing harmful acts not as inexplicable evil, but as complex outcomes we can potentially understand and mitigate.
It's a fundamental shift in perspective, moving from judgment to understanding, from punishment to problem solving.
Wow. Okay, so wrapping this up, this deep dive really highlights the profound challenge that modern science and even advanced AI like ChatGPT-5 pose to our traditional intuitive notion of free will, at least the idea of being an uncaused originator.
The scientific case for causality seems very strong, even if AIs like Grok and Gemini reflect ongoing philosophical debate or different definitions.
And as we've just discussed, this isn't just abstract philosophy. The implications are incredibly real and practical, potentially transforming everything from our justice system and concepts of responsibility to how we foster empathy and tackle huge societal issues.
It forces us to confront whether our current systems, often based on blame and punishment, are truly effective, or even just if they rest on a potentially shaky foundation regarding free will.
Or if a shift towards understanding causes, focusing on compassion, prevention, and smarter design could lead to a better world.
It definitely gives us a lot to think about. And perhaps a final thought for you, the listener, building on this. If every single one of your actions, thoughts, and feelings ultimately stems from a chain of causes beyond your absolute uncaused control, how does that truly redefine your personal sense of responsibility?
And how does it change how you view others, their struggles, their successes, and the very nature of human agency in the world around you? What stands out to you?